Welcome back to session on pollination and embryogenesis in plant children. The process of dispersal of pollen grains is called pollination. Pollination can be within the same flower, that is, pollen grains are released inside the flower and they are pollinating, fertilizing the female reproductive unit of the same flower. In that case, it can be self pollination, or pollination can happen between two different flowers, then that is called cross pollination. So, here you can see that Combelina bengalensis, Combelina plant is there, and you are able to see two types of flowers there. Beneath the ground you have got what are called cleistogamous flowers, and above the ground you are able to see chasmogamous flowers. Now what do we understand by cleistogamous flowers? These flowers are present below the ground and they don't open at all. They don't open and they undergo what is called self-pollination or autogamy. And the flowers above the ground are called chasmogamous flowers. So they are actually open to what is called cross-pollination. What is the advantage of self-pollination? If self-pollination occurs, the advantage is assured seed set. When plants go for what is called cross-pollination, the point is, children, many pollen grains have to be produced, and it is a chance that the pollen grains are falling on the correct kind of or the compatible stigma, and pollination and then fertilization will happen. All these are a little bit chance events, isn't it? So it is every time possible that the pollen grain is getting deposited on the wrong stigma and incompatible stigma, so many things. But whereas in case of self pollination, these problems do not arise at all. Okay, so self pollination ensures what is called compulsory or assured seed set. It is an advantage, but there is one disadvantage, is that there is no variation coming up, because the same pollen grains of the flower, same flower, they are pollinating and fertilization is happening in the same flower. So genetically there is no variation coming up, isn't it? But variations are important for a species to adapt to the changing environment, isn't it? So there is an advantage of autogamy, but many plants prefer to go for what is called cross pollination. Okay. Now you see, when we speak about cross pollination, then how come that the pollen grains are lifted from the one particular flower and placed on another flower, isn't it, placed on another stigma? You have got some agents of pollination. The first picture is showing a small insect. In fact, it is pollinating there, and the next one shows the bird, which is the pollinating agent there, and the next two in fact show how wind is a pollinating agent. Okay, so these are agents of pollination. Now, what is the difference between wind pollinated and insect pollinated or animal pollinated flowers, you see? And now here, can we make out the difference? The first picture and the case where a bird is pollinating, the flowers, both these here are really brightly colored, and I think they must be ornamentals, they must be grown in the gardens, isn't it? Whereas the next two, that is wind pollination, the flowers are very small and inconspicuous, and in the first one it is white, and the next one I am not able to, probably it is green in color, isn't it? So they are not very attractive. Now the differences between wind pollinated and insect pollinated flowers is an important question from the exam point of view, and in the recent CBSE exam also they have asked. So wind pollinated flowers are very small, they are inconspicuous due to dull colors. Okay, they don't have any odor or they don't have any nectar. The pollen grains are produced in large numbers. Okay, then the stigma is highly receptive, it can be feathery, it is sticky. All these things will be there for wind pollinated flowers. Okay, then coming to insect pollinated flowers, now you have seen that they are very large. Okay, they are in inflorescences, they are arranged, bright colors. Okay, then they will have strong scent, odor. Okay, that is, and they have nectar. Okay, and comparatively, yes, compared to wind pollinated flowers, the insect pollinated flowers or bird pollinated flowers produce few pollen grains, little less, isn't it? So here wind pollinated flowers ke liye all grasses are usually pollinated by wind. Okay, maize is there, parthenium, archica are given here. Insect pollinated, you can write rose, snapdragon, calotropis, many examples, hibiscus, all these are pollinated by animals or insects rather. Now, when we come to cross pollination, as I told you, cross pollination is between two different flowers. Now, the point is whether these two flowers, between these two flowers where pollination is happening, that is, pollen grains of one flower being lifted and placed on the stigma of another flower. The question is whether both these flowers are present on the same plant or both these flowers are present on two different plants. Now, the point is, first case you see, Geitonogamy, the two flowers, I have put a small kind of arrow mark between these two. That means from one flower the pollen grains are lifted onto the second flower, but both these flowers are present on the same plant. The point is, when both these flowers are present on the same plant, then it is genetically autogamy. Very important point to note. So, Geitonogamy is genetical autogamy. Why? Both these flowers are genetically same now because they are present on the same plant. So, it is not the self-pollination case of what to say Commelina cleistogamous flower, but little different. But this kind of cross-pollination also is not going to ensure what is called variations because both these flowers are present on the same plant, so genetically same. Now, look into the next pictures, children. So, here I try to put an arrow mark between two different flowers on two different plants. Now, yes, this is actually what is called cross pollination because here the pollination is occurring between two different flowers on two different plants. So, when there are two different plants, then genetically they are, it's quite possible that they are different, and here variations and other things can come up, and you pretty well know variations are a source or raw material for evolution, isn't it? So, now look into the differences between Geitonogamy and xenogamy. Now, Geitonogamy is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Okay, so pollen grains are genetically similar to the plant, that is from a flower A. If pollen grains are lifted to a flower B, then A and B are genetically same. The pollen grains of A are similar to the genetic constitution of B. That's what we mean. Now, in case of xenogamy, it is a transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of different plants, different flowers on different plants. So, the pollen grains are genetically different from the plant. So, if pollen grains of plant A from flower A are lifted to a flower B on a different plant, then A and B are genetically different. So, pollen grains are deposited on the stigma of a genetically different flower. Now, pollination by water. Now, pollination by water can occur in Vallisneria, Zostera and others. Now, in the first picture you are seeing that the female flower is there. Female flower has a very long stalk. Okay, it is reaching the surface of the water. Okay, and the male flower is there. And the male flower has got what are the anthers, and within that you have got the pollen grains, and the pollen grains are actually floating on the surface of the water and reaching the female flower. So, if the pollen grains have to float on water, what do we expect? The pollen grains should be light in weight, and they should have a mucilaginous covering, isn't it? So that they don't absorb water, they don't get wet. If they have to absorb water, if they have to get wet, what should happen? Then now the weight of the pollen grain should increase and it should go down, isn't it? It will sink to the bottom, but that should not happen. So, these things have pollen grains have a mucilaginous covering, and this is an example where pollination occurs on the surface of the water. And the pollination also can occur beneath the surface of the water like this, as in the case of Zostera, isn't it? So, here the Zostera plant is very much immersed in water and pollination is occurring inside. Now, that water current is having small pollen grains there, it is getting deposited there in the water, you are finding them, that is why the picture is like that. So, beneath the water surface also it can happen, and these pollen grains here also will have a mucilaginous covering, they will be light in weight, they can be ribbon shaped, okay, like this. Now, Most of the flowers are bisexual, isn't it? We must have observed hibiscus or many flowers you observe in your garden. Most of the flowers are bisexual. They have both the male and female reproductive parts. Now in that case, how do they avoid what is called self-pollination? Because as we said, cross-pollination ensures what is called variations, isn't it? So to avoid self-pollination, what are the steps taken by these flowers? Now you see the first point, pollen release and stigma receptivity, they are not synchronized. The maturity season of the anther, okay, and the maturity season of the male and female reproductive parts is different. So when the male is ready, that means pollen grains are ready to be released, the female reproductive structure there is not ready, that means egg formation has not yet taken place. So there is no point if the pollen grain deposited on the stigma of the same flower also, because inside the ovary egg formation has not taken place. So that's how they avoid. Okay. Next is anther and stigma placed at different positions. They are different in their heights. Okay. Generally, if you see the flowers, the anthers, the stamens are longer, okay, and this style stigma are little shorter. But if the style and stigma are much more longer than the stamens, then also self-pollination can be avoided. Okay. Now next is self-incompatibility. The point is, suppose the pollen grains get deposited on the stigma of the same flower. The stigma is chemotactic, that means it has certain chemicals by which it can recognize the self pollen grains of the same flower. It will not allow the pollen grain to germinate. That is called self incompatibility. The next is production of unisexual flowers, monoecious or dioecious. The pictures shown next are the male flowers of papaya and the female flowers of papaya. So if the flower is either male or female, the problem is already solved. The female flower doesn't have stamens and the male flower doesn't have ovary. So compulsory there has to be cross pollination, isn't it? Sometimes in case of papaya, the male plant is having male flowers, female plant is having female flowers, like that. Sometimes some of the plants have male flowers, female flowers on the same plant. But whatever it is, the flower is unisexual. So in that case, cross pollination is ensured. Now these outbreeding devices has been asked in the CBSE several times. So remember these points, children. Now, if the pollen grain is just getting deposited on the stigma, that is pollination part. But every pollination will not ensure what is called fertilization, because in our garden we have so many plants. So it's quite possible that you have got hibiscus pollen grains, and hibiscus pollen grains are lifted and somehow placed on the some guava plant or something which is there in the garden. Will that ensure what is called fertilization and do we get a hybrid automatically? Never, isn't it? So there is something called pollen pistil interaction also coming up. So recognition of compatible pollen, it is the interaction between chemical components of pollen and those of stigma. So even if wind is lifting, as we have seen in the previous slides, the wind is lifting some grass pollen grains and it is depositing on the some other plant, some genetically or some other different genera or species, automatically germination of the pollen grain will not happen, isn't it? So germination of the pollen and development of the male gametophyte is a result of the stamen accepting the pollen, in fact. Okay, so compatible pollen starts at germination. So compatibility check karna kiska जिम्मेवारी है? It is the responsibility of the stigma. Compatible pollen starts at germination, stimulated by certain secretion of stigma. Okay, then intine grows out through one of the germ pore and content of pollen moves into the tube. Okay, that is, two male gametes are actually carried through this pollen tube towards the ovule. Now, what is embryogenesis? This refers to process of initiation and development of embryo from zygote. When does it occur? It occurs after fertilization. Where does it occur? It takes place in the embryo sac of ovule. What happens during this event? During this process, the zygote undergoes programmed cell division, cell elongation and differentiation to form mature embryo. Okay. Now, types of embryogenesis. Zygotic embryogenesis means the embryo formation is happening or the zygote is developing into embryo. Somatic embryogenesis means other cells, maybe nucellar cells or antipodals or anything. In fact, virtually any cell of the embryo sac or any other cell of the ovule also is developing into embryo. Okay, and whatever it is, both of these different types of embryos sometimes they develop. Okay, they share the same pattern of development. Now, what are the stages of embryogenesis? Single celled stage, two celled stage, four celled stage, octant stage. What do you understand? One cell dividing into 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8. So it is simple mitotic divisions. Octant stage के बाद क्या है? Globular, heart shaped, okay, torpedo stage, mature embryo like this. And where is the embryo present? Now these you can see, isn't it? A fertilized egg is there, egg, okay. Then zygote, it is dividing into 2 to octant, globular, triangular, heart shaped, torpedo, okay. A mature embryo you are finding, it is having 2 cotyledons here. A dicot embryo I am trying to show you here, okay. The zygote undergoes an asymmetric transverse cell division that gives rise to 2 cells, a small apical cell, okay, which is towards the chalaza, and a large basal cells towards the micropylar end. So these 2 cells are different and give rise to different structures, and so they establish what is called as polarity on the embryo. That means one portion develops into the cotyledons, in future it develops into what is a stem, and a portion of the embryo develops into the root. So that is why there has to be polarity. The apical cell contains most of the cytoplasm. It gives rise to hypocotyle, shoot, apical meristem, cotyledons, all these. Okay, a basal cell, okay, it is present toward the bottom side. It gives rise to what is called as suspensor. A suspensor is basically meant to draw or derive nutrients for the developing embryo, to nurture and take care of the embryo. Now, one important aspect here, apomixis. Now, till now we have seen that ovary develops into the fruit, ovule develops into seed, okay. Then zygote develops into the embryo. So, ovary is the fruit, ovule is the seed, and inside the ovule we find what is called as embryo. And this embryo is developed as a result of fertilization. And in fact, seed also is a product of fertilization, isn't it? So after fertilization, the ovule is becoming the seed and ovary is developing into the fruit. But sometimes it is quite possible that seeds are formed without fertilization. Okay. So next cell, which is an egg cell which is diploid, can develop into directly embryo without fertilization. The cells of the nucellus. In the embryo sac, in the previous video, I told you that an embryo sac is 8 nucleate, 7 celled. So these are haploid. But the other tissue part of the ovule, that is nucellus, okay, anatropous ovule का जो nucellus tissue है वो तो haploid नहीं है, वो तो diploid है. If those cells can develop into embryo, then that also is without fertilization, it is coming up, isn't it? So this is apomixis, if seeds are formed without fertilization. Now there is some advantage if we try to dip, because apomixis is a natural phenomenon in some of the plants. Okay. So if we are able to identify these genes and transfer these genes into what are called as the hybrid varieties which we have developed. Hybrid varieties are developed for most of the economically important crop plants like sugar cane, rice, wheat and all, isn't it? So these hybrid varieties have been developed for a purpose, maybe a disease resistance they want, or something was required and scientists have developed these. And if these hybrids are left to what is called cross pollination, then is every possibility that the good characters which has been introduced into the hybrid may be lost in future. So better that the apomictic genes are introduced into these hybrids, so that farmer can take the seeds of the hybrid variety and continue. Right now what is happening is, seeds are disbursed to the farmers by agencies like government agencies, state government actually decides who is going to distribute, they are going to tell the farmers, and purchasing the seeds is really a costly affair, and developing hybrid varieties now and then also is very costly and time consuming affair, isn't it? So this is the advantage that apomixis, if it is introduced into these hybrid varieties of some of the economically important croplands, then the advantages, the good characters of the hybrid will be retained. Polyembryony, development of many embryos. Okay, if more than one egg may form an embryo sac. Till now what we have seen? We have seen that there is one particular, in a particular anatropous ovule there is one egg. So when we have one egg there, it is going to give rise to one zygote or one embryo. But if many embryos are formed, what does that mean? Many embryos are formed means some other cell of the ovule also is developing into embryo. Okay, so other cells like synergids or nucellus also can develop into embryo. It is a common feature in citrus, mango, etc. So there is a picture in the next to the description here. You just concentrate and see. This is a citrus ovule. Okay, citrus means Mosambi, then orange, all these are coming up in that particular citrus genus and belong to the family Rutaceae. So citrus ovule, you see, nucellar embryo is developing. Okay, a normal embryo also is developing. Okay, so from the nucellus tissue also embryo is developing. So that is what is called polyembryony. Okay, so we will meet in the next biology sessions. Okay, so in this particular session what did we discuss? We discussed about apomixis, polyembryony, okay, and embryogenesis and types of pollination, isn't it? And let us meet in the next session. Until then, thank you.